The Boy Who Reversed Himself by William Sleator, 17. Feed them, Gigigi, hurry. We must keep them happy. If they can go through walls, that means... Means what, Ramoom? Never mind, feed them. We will be going soon. Don't just sit there staring, Laura. Answer me. How did you get over that wall? The same way I did it on the roof, remember? You said that didn't work out here. You're hiding something. Going where, Ramoom? Back to where they came from, back to their own kind, unless they do not want to take us home. Unless they do not want them to take us home. Unless they do not want us to take them home, that is. Hey, Pete called out. Don't get the wrong... Shut up, Pete. Shut up yourself. I want to go home. I don't believe anything will happen if Ramoom finds us helps us find 3 space. That's just some hysterical idea of yours. Gigigi dropped food into the cage. I gobbled it down, hungry, after all the running around I had done in the maze. And I didn't feel like arguing with Pete. The less I said to him, the better. Gigigi and Ramoom had not yet become jaded. They were still vastly amused by the spectacle of 3-dimensional digression. And do you not think, Gigigi, that others might be amused by such a sight as this? They might be willing to do much for us to obtain the privilege of watching. Ramoom, you promised. These creatures belong to me. They are our secret. These 2 creatures, yes, ungenerous one. You may keep these 2 as your own personal secret playthings eternally for all I care. But what about others, where they came from? I would not be breaking any promise if I found others for purposes of display, or, I should say, to share with the world. It does not seem fair to keep this wonder all to ourselves. Well, there goes 3 space, I couldn't help muttering. But, Pete said, I could tell by the expression on his face that he was finally beginning to understand what would happen if Ramoom found 3 space. But he still wouldn't admit that I had been right all along. Maybe, we could make some kind of a bargain with him, he said weakly. Like if he brought us home, maybe he could take somebody else, like Mrs. Brown, maybe, and then leave our world alone after that. Oh, sure, I said. I sure would trust Ramoom to make a bargain and then stick to it. When he has total power and we don't have any. Great idea, Pete. That solves everything. I don't see you coming up with a better plan. Maybe I will if you give me a chance. I tried to ignore Gigigi and Ramoom and figure a few things out. I was pretty sure Omar could see us and was aware of what was going on. He had saved me at precisely the right moment, and it was just like Omar. He had done exactly the same things back at home, hiding invisibly in 4 space and watching. The problem was, now we were in 4 space. So where was Omar watching us from? And that wasn't the only problem. Why was Omar, possibly in cahoots with the opera-singing 4 space creature, hiding and watching us? If they could save me from the pig thing, that meant they also had the ability to get me and Pete out of the cage and away from Ramoon and Gigigi. So why weren't they doing that? The longer they delayed, the more likely we would be to give in to coercion and spill the information about 3 space. If they were planning to rescue us, what were they waiting for? I thought of the new words of the song and Omar's frequent warnings, and I could only conclude that they weren't planning to rescue us. Maybe all they could do was observe us to make sure we were not doing anything to endanger 3 space, and then stop us before we did. I forced myself to be realistic about it, unpleasant as it was, and realistically I knew that 2 individual lives were utterly dispensable when balanced against the safety of the entire 3 space universe. And as long as we were out here, the universe wouldn't be secure. Omar didn't want them to kill us. He was probably making them wait until the last possible moment. But when that moment came, they wouldn't have any choice. Then why had Omar bothered to save me from the pig thing? Because he would rather have me die painlessly? The more I thought about it, the more grim sense it made. I couldn't even blame Omar. What else could he do to correct the terrible mistake he had made? As soon as Pete made another slip, they would have to act. All I could do was try to keep Pete's mouth closed for as long as possible, but it was still only a matter of time. We had to die. It was the inevitable result of our coming out here and getting caught. Omar had told me many times. Unless I could do something that would throw Ramoom and Gigigi off completely, something that would absolutely convince them that 3 space did not exist, and that there was no way they would ever find any other creatures like us. You see now, my warped companion, that my little test was a success. They understand, they can communicate, they know directions, and now that they have eaten, it is time for our trip. Gigi's feelings were hurt. Ramoom teased her often about her deformity, but she remained sensitive about it. Now you are imagining things, Ramoom. They are sweet little creatures and quick, but that does not mean they have true intelligence or understanding, and it is not necessary to insult me. The terrible accident that changed me was not my fault. What accident? How had Gigi been reversed? I got reversed by going into force space and turning around. Where would Gigi go to have that happen to her? You will see how much they understand, but there is no time to quibble. We must hurry before... Good, Pete said. I'm ready to get out of here. There's nothing we can do to stop him from... Shh, I'm trying to listen. Before what, Ramoom? What are you afraid of? You are always worrying. Be relaxed, like Gigi. We can take our time. They are safe with us. Your brain is as addled as your face. They may not be as safe as you think, and do not try to interfere, I warn you. I can leave you at any time, and you know that no one else would have the stomach to be a competition for one such as you. They may not be as safe as you think. That was it. Ramoom had seen me being pulled through the wall of the maze. To him, we were evanescent, easily vanishing. If we could go through the walls of mazes, we could get out of cages, too, if we were clever enough to think about it. He didn't know I hadn't done it on my own, and that we really were safe in the cage. He wanted us to show him where 3-space was before we got smart and got away. Gigi's reversal had given me another idea, an idea that might be the answer to where Omar was watching us from. Now I had the beginnings of a plan. It was riskier than I would have liked, but I had no time to come up with anything else. I just can't afford to stand here anymore, Pete was whining, and you can't stop me if you want to help find the way back. Anyway, you're nuts to think one creature like Ramoom could destroy the whole universe. You worry too much, that's all. Gigi had said that to Ramoom. Pete was saying it to me, and I had said it to Omar. Naturally, he had been worried about taking me into force space. It really had been a colossally stupid thing for him to do, though I was as much to blame as he was, but maybe I could do something to make up for it. I hoped Omar would catch on in time. Now you must listen carefully to your friend Ramoom. Ramoom stared into the cage. He was not a pretty sight, his 4 hands twisting together like a ball of writhing reptiles. The bewildering manifolds of his face split apart by a smile that seemed to stretch all the way around his head. The inside of his mouth was like an aerial view of a bombed-out city. You must do as I say, so that I can take you home. You must trust your friend Ramoom, yes. I had to think fast to work out the details of my plan. I knew now why Ramoom had not bothered to shut the door of the cage after the maze experiment. He knew we were earthbound creatures, ruled by gravity. The cage was high enough so that a fall from it would be crippling, if not fatal. On our scale, it was a good 40 or 50 feet above the floor, so why choose it? They could probably see us better, with the door opened anyway. Now can you demonstrate to Ramoom the sound for the affirmative? Say it loudly. I glared at Pete, my lips pressed together, trying to will him not to obey. Pete pouted back at me, thrusting out his lower lip. Tell Ramoom, or he cannot take you home. Keep your mouth shut, Pete, I ordered him. Pete stared up at Ramoom. Easy for him, because without the Trinox, he couldn't see what he really looked like. Cupped his hands over his mouth and yelled, Yes! Yes, yes, yes! Bayeth, Ramoom boomed out, using his force-based vocal cords for the first time since we had arrived. Bayeth. Yes! Pete screamed back, nodding frantically. Yes! Very good. Very smart, little one. And the negative? No! No! GNU. GNU, Ramoom echoed. Very, very helpful. Now you can easily point Ramoom in the right direction. See, you can't stop me, Pete started to say. Hey, where'd you go? Without the Trinox, Pete could only see one cross-section of force space at a time, and I had left his line of sight. I stopped climbing for a moment, clinging to the outside of the cage, and turned to Ramoom and shouted, Yes! Pointing above me, I began climbing again, praying that Omar would not kill me before he figured out what I was trying to do. Pete, who had managed to learn how to scan force space by turning his head back and forth, finally saw where I was. "Laura, are you out of your mind? Come back. You're going to kill yourself." "If somebody else doesn't do it first," I shouted. Again, I turned toward Ramoom and pointed up. "Anna." Yes, 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 I told him and went on climbing. It wasn't easy, climbing up around the outside of a hypercube. It didn't just have 6 sides like an ordinary cube. It had 24. They were connected at 16 corners and jutted out at peculiar angles, so some of the time I was crawling nearly upside down. Each time I reached one of the edges, there were 32 of them. I wouldn't know which direction to expect next. My best guide was gravity. If I just kept going whichever way felt closest to up and Anna, I'd eventually end up on top of the cage, if one thing or another didn't stop me first. "Oh, Ramoom, you have frightened the poor little thing out of its wits. I must put it back before it falls." I was lucky that the little cubes that made up the surface of the grid were just the right size for my hands and feet to fit easily inside them, and the cage was solid enough so that my weight didn't make it swing. But it was more frightening than the bridge because it was so much higher. I did not look down, but kept my eyes focused on the cubes just above my hands. "Wait, Gigigi, leave it alone. It knows it cannot escape that way. Perhaps it is trying to show us something." Yes, yes, I told Ramoom, trying to point up and Anna again. It was difficult to do it at that moment since I was clinging to the underside of a nearly horizontal surface. My hair kept falling into my eyes and my arms were aching. I couldn't climb much longer without a rest. And was it even going to work? I could only communicate with Ramoom by answering yes or no questions. He might never understand what I was trying to tell him. "You are wrong, Ramoom. It is going to kill itself. It has nothing to show us. It is running mindlessly." "No, no, no," I shouted, loud enough for them to hear, at the same time trying to appear rational. But it's not easy to scream without sounding hysterical, especially when you're out of breath, hanging 50 feet in the air and trying to negotiate around a non-Euclidean object. "Did you hear that? Their sound for the negative. It's denying what you say, Gigigi." "Yes, yes, yes," I called as I reached an edge and a new face. This one slanted up and Anna at something equivalent to a 45-degree angle. I hoisted myself up onto it, climbed a few feet, wedged my hands and feet, and stretched out against it, giving my arms a chance to rest. Kata inside the cage, through layers of grid. Pete was turning in a circle, trying to find me. He was worried, but he was also furious, especially now that I was getting all the attention. In a minute, he'd do something drastic to get it back. I started climbing again. "But what could it be trying to tell us, Ramoom? I am afraid it will get hurt. Please, just let me take one step closer to the cage and I will lock you outside again, repulsiveness." I wasn't looking at them, but I could sense his threatening gesture and her shrinking away. I heard her whimper like a truck putting on the brakes. I heard Ramoom, from the way he browbeat her, using her deformity against her, constantly threatening to leave and telling her that no one could stand to live with her. Then why did he? Not out of kindness and self-sacrifice, I was sure of that. More likely he stayed because her appearance made her vulnerable and gave him power over her. He liked power, and maybe he had problems existing in a normal force-based world. So he had to turn to a poor creature like Gigigi to make himself feel big. And how much bigger would 3-space make him feel to someone like Ramoom? It would be irresistible. He was exactly the worst kind of person to find out about 3-space, though no one would be immune to the temptation of a universe to control. Even Gigigi, who was basically decent and kind, could turn out to be a menace. That was when I wondered for the first time why no force-based creature had ever stumbled on 3-space before. What had prevented it all this time? Then I reached the top of the cage and forgot the question. Everything would be decided in the next few minutes, and whether I lived through it or not was completely up to Omar. And that's the end of chapter 17.